My brother asked me, do you still have feelings for your wife after cheating on her? I thought seriously about it. How should I put this? It's not that I feel nothing at all, after all, we've been family for a long time. But as for whether I still love her deeply, that's no longer the case. I thought I understood the true nature of marriage, until that day on the street. I saw her smiling at another man. On the balcony, I slowly exhaled a smoke ring, just preparing to answer Chris's question. The phone rang, it was my wife Chloe. What's up, Chloe? My voice was tender. She laughed before speaking. Ha, darling, when are you coming home? Buddy learned how to do backflips, we'll show you. I laughed too. Alright, I'll be home soon. Want some donuts? I'll bring some back for you later. I want to eat that. Are you having your usual latte today or trying that new caramel special? New caramel special, we exclaimed with laughter before hanging up the phone. As I turned my head, Chris tilted his own and stared at me blankly, his expression slightly dazed. I tugged my lips into a smirk, unsurprised by his reaction. He had just gone through an exceptionally ugly divorce battle with his wife over his mistress, leaving him physically and mentally exhausted, the two now mortal enemies. Whereas my marriage with Chloe was all lovey-dovey sweetness. After 4 years of marriage, far from growing tired of each other, our bond had only grown deeper and more unshakable. In fact, I had always treated her well. After the affair, I treated her even better. By any measure, anyone would consider her an enviably happy woman. Chris puckered his lips and urged me, hey, you still haven't answered my question. Shaking my head helplessly, I flicked the ash from my cigarette and asked him, put it this way, do you feel anything when you touch your own hand? What kind of feeling could that be? I took a drag of my cigarette, squinting at the staggered snowscape in the distance, and said slowly, that's exactly how I feel about Chloe now. Touching her is like touching my own hand. But if her hand were hurt, I'd feel the same pain. Chris blinked. Is that why you're with Laura Scott? I turned my head, giving him a stern warning. Laura's a proud woman, don't you dare say that to her face. 2. I wouldn't consider myself a particularly wicked person. Even though I slept with Laura while married, let's just say some things in this world are just fucking unsatisfactory. At a high school reunion a year ago, I unexpectedly reunited with Laura, the girl I had a crush on in my youth. The moment I laid eyes on her, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The former Laura, dazzlingly beautiful, wealthy, and academically outstanding. For boys like us, still struggling in the gloom of insecurity and youth. She was like an angel, an unattainable presence even in dreams. But that day, what I saw was a woman utterly transformed by life. Haggard, gaunt, and impoverished. The rigid, abrupt lines at the corners of lips and brows bear the habitual scars of defensive resistance against life's hardships and adversities. My heart was seized by an indescribable sorrow, as if the moon I'd once devoutly worshipped in my past life had suddenly plunged into this vulgar, worldly mire. It had lost its shine and was covered in dust. At the end of the day, as everyone was looking at my new car, Laura said, this car must have cost about $60,000 or $70,000, right? A classmate nearby sneered. What a joke. This car costs over 150,000 yuan. Jason is now successful in his career as a regional director. Do you really think he's still the same as before? Her face instantly flushed red, her lips pressed tightly together. I quickly said, it's not that expensive, don't listen to their nonsense. She glanced at me, her face stiff as she turned and walked away without even saying goodbye to her classmates. Amidst a chorus of sighs, I learned about her experiences over these years. During university, her family went bankrupt and their financial situation plummeted. After graduation, she married an ill-tempered man who turned out to be a terrible match. During one quarrel, she accidentally seriously injured him, forcing her to sell their house and car to pay compensation until they were left destitute, after which the man was sent to prison. After the divorce, she lived alone in a rented apartment with her 4-year-old son, scraping by on insurance sales. She never used to attend class reunions, probably just came this time to drum up some business. Making money isn't shameful, but who'd beg her to buy anything with that attitude? 2 weeks later, Laura suddenly called me and asked if I had any needs for commercial insurance configuration. Chloe works in the bank's insurance department, and she'd already arranged all my personal insurance coverage. Laura's voice sounded somewhat disappointed over the phone, so I immediately introduced a few friends to her. Afterward, Laura treated me to dinner as thanks, and I happily accepted the invitation. Not long after, her son suddenly developed a high fever. With heavy snow outside and no taxis available, she called me in desperation. Naturally, I helped with all my might. Gradually, Laura would occasionally invite me over whenever she cooked something special. Her son Leo started calling me Uncle Jason and would cling to me tightly each time. It was snowing heavily that day, and since I couldn't leave right away, both of us drank a couple of glasses together. After Leo fell asleep, she suddenly got up and went to the bedroom, calling my name after a while. I walked in and saw her sitting on the edge of the bed in a revealing nightgown, her eyes red as she looked at me. She bit her lip and said softly, Jason, I have nothing to repay you with. If you don't mind, I only have this body. I turned away in embarrassment, stammering, Laura, I didn't mean to ask for anything in return. We're old classmates, helping you was only natural. Behind me, she sighed faintly, her voice full of melancholy. Remember in class, how you'd always sneak glances at me from your desk? I know, I'm not the same person I was back then. If you're worried about anything, let me make clear I've decided never to marry. I'd never come between you and your family. All I want is now. Snowflakes were swirling wildly outside the window, making it seem like another world from the indoors. Suddenly I turned around and lunged toward her. I came home very late that day. When the car pulled up downstairs, I spotted Chloe from afar, bundled up in a thick cocoon, standing in the snow, scanning the surroundings. The moment she saw me, she first heaved a long sigh and then teetered over unsteadily, grinning from ear to ear. Jason Miller, if you don't show up right now, you'll only find yourself an ice sculpture of a wife. I have many social engagements, so she never asks where I've been. Taking off her own scarf, she loops it around my neck with a smile and says, seeing as you've made it home safe and sound in this heavy snow, I won't hold it against you for not answering my calls. That day, the cold masked my stiff expression and movements. I quickly adapted to this change in my life. Laura had all the time in the world, while I often spent my afternoons visiting various stores for inspections, making my absence from the company a regular occurrence. We had plenty of time and places for secret rendezvous. Even as circumstances changed, Laura's demeanor remained proud in front of me, or perhaps she knew all too well that this was exactly the version of her I was infatuated with. This reminded me of the past. Chris was my brother and also my classmate from back then. He expressed his bewilderment. Laura was indeed impressive before, but now, she's not even remotely close to your wife. He doesn't understand. There's a saying that people are ultimately trapped for life by what they yearned for but could never obtain in their youth. Laura was that very unattainable one, and now, she lies beneath me. This brings me immense satisfaction every time I sleep with her. She refuses to take my money, saying it makes her feel ashamed. So, I thought of various ways to compensate her, like introducing my friends to buy insurance from her. For instance, using her phone number to top up at certain stores, or casually passing along gifts from clients to her. No matter what, Laura's presence has become the perfect footnote to my current life of career success and boundless prosperity. I never thought about divorce. Chloe and I were deeply in love, a perfect match living an ideal married life. She had such a cheerful and easily contented disposition. Being with her made me feel relaxed, confident, and full of vitality. Besides, I'd sworn at her mother's deathbed to love her forever and always treat her well. I believe I've kept that promise faithfully these past years. As for the potential hurt my infidelity might cause her, I've figured it out. She'll only feel pain when she knows, and that's what truly constitutes harm. But if she never finds out, nothing would change at all. In fact, the opposite might happen. While ensuring her material needs and emotional support, my moral guilt would make me treat her even better. That's exactly how it's been. The relationship between Chloe and me right now, better than before. Every year on my birthday, Chloe would specially take a day off. She starts preparing in the morning, going to the fresh market far from home to pick the freshest ingredients, washing, chopping, stewing, stir-frying, keeping busy all day, just waiting for me to come home from work to a table full of delicious dishes. I, too, would finish my tasks at the office early to try to get home sooner. Laughing and chatting, we'd wrap up the remaining tasks together, then eat and talk. But this year, Laura called me. She asked, "Can I celebrate your birthday with you?" I hesitated for 2 seconds before agreeing. Over the past 6 months, Laura had truly kept her word, never making any unreasonable demands. After each intimate encounter, she would meticulously check me over, careful not to overlook any unnoticed slip-ups. I figured she must have been feeling unsettled. Understandable. Chloe and I spend every day together, we have endless nights ahead, countless birthdays to celebrate. Missing this one wouldn't matter. I called Chloe and told her I'd be home late because of an important client dinner. Amidst the sizzling sounds of cooking oil, she asked me, about what time will you be back? I thought for a moment, around 7 o'clock. Alright, I figured 7 o'clock should be about right. But unexpectedly, the moment I stepped into Laura's rental that day, I was met with a fervent and fierce kiss. She had sent Leo to a friend's place and was wearing an alluring sheer dress, wildly bold, recklessly wanton, as if determined to devour me whole in bed. She exhausted every possible way, taking me again and again. When I awoke from unconscious sleep and checked my phone, it was already 11 o'clock. A momentary panic seized me as I hurried to put on my clothes. Laura suddenly flung herself at me, lightly biting my shoulder, then blushed and whispered with teary eyes, "It's my fault, I shouldn't have kept you for so long today." Her appearance made me feel guilty again. As I dressed, I comforted her softly, "In a little while, I'll take you out for a few days. Then, we can be like a real married couple, you can call me husband if you want, tell me to do whatever you like." She smiled through her tears, such smooth talk. As I hurried home, I thought Chloe must already be in bed asleep. She always kept regular hours, going to bed at 11 and waking at 7, a routine she'd maintained for years. Yet upon entering, I found her slumped over the dining table, fast asleep. The table was laden with various dishes, fresh flowers, and a birthday cake. I checked my reflection in the doorway mirror to ensure I looked presentable, then walked over and gently roused her. Chloe looked at me with sleepy eyes, hesitated for 2 seconds, then broke into a grin. "Sweetheart, happy birthday." I pursed my lips. "Why did you sleep here?" She yawned. "You said you'd be back by 7 p.m. Of course I had to wait for your birthday, but when you were with clients, I didn't want to call. Guess I dozed off here." "You haven't eaten?" I was shocked. "I nibbled so much while cooking that I'm not hungry at all," she replied with a giggle. I looked at her, inexplicably filled with an indescribable anger, and shouted, "Are you stupid? If I'm not back by this time, obviously I've already eaten out. Couldn't you have just eaten first?" Chloe froze momentarily, then after a few seconds softly asked, "What's wrong with you?" Then it hit me. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have raised my voice like that. I'm just tired today. I'm going to bed." After saying that, I practically fled into my room. As I lay in bed trying to make sense of this inexplicable mood, I heard a faint rustling behind me before feeling warm arms wrapping around my back. "Darling, I'm sorry. I know you're worried about me going hungry, and I promise I'll eat properly next time. Were you unhappy outside today? Want to come do something fun?" This is a little unspoken understanding we have in our lives. When one of us is in a bad mood, feeling wronged or aggrieved outside, the other will take the initiative to seek intimacy, a bit of warmth that married life offers each other. I knew I shouldn't have gotten angry like that, and feeling somewhat mollified, I wanted to take this opportunity to make peace. But perhaps having done this too many times with Laura, I found myself completely out of sorts today. The more anxious you are, the more agitated you become. The more agitated you become, the less you succeed. Suppressing my voice, I said, "Let's call it a day." Chloe thought I was still sulking and came laughing to tickle me. I was getting exasperated and let out a low growl. "Enough! Can't you have a little self-respect?" Chloe's hand froze, her eyes widened as she stared at me in the dimly lit room. 5. Chloe was angry. She left for work this morning without saying a word. In my memory, she was rarely someone who got angry. We met 6 years ago at a charity event. I was drawn to her poised and graceful demeanor when she spoke on stage. I started pursuing her passionately. As we spent more time together, I kept discovering delightful surprises about her. She and her mother depended on each other for survival, and despite her tragic circumstances, Chloe raised herself remarkably well. Optimistic, open-minded, tolerant, and content with what she had most of the time, she was happy and cheerful. Life's hardships, in her eyes, were nothing more than minor monsters to beat before leveling up. When she twisted her ankle, she comforted herself, "This is God telling me to rest properly, I must obey what the old man says." My bag was stolen, and she cheerfully said, "Now I finally get to buy a new one." I grew up in a repressive family atmosphere. Over the years, although I've achieved some success in my career, I've always lived with great tension. After being with her, I gradually learned to relax. I learned to appreciate a flower, to observe a cloud. Learning to truly accept myself, I bought a huge bouquet of flowers and went to the bank to pick her up from work, making her colleagues giggle and laugh. When she saw me, she walked over, pressing her lips together without saying a word. I slapped my own mouth. This mouth is entirely to blame. Deserves a beating. "Honey, do you want to hit it a couple times too?" She didn't move, then I made a grand show of preparing to kneel, which made her quickly pull me up. She burst into a chuckle. "All right, let's put this on the tab for now." I grinned cheekily. "I knew you wouldn't really be mad." After a moment's silence, she looked at me seriously and said, "Darling, just this once. Don't let it happen again." I nodded vigorously like a pounding garlic, and only then did her smile return. The matter was soon forgotten, and everything returned to normal. In the following days, a heavy snowstorm hit the city, temperatures plummeted, and my chronic pharyngitis flared up again. Chloe happily mentioned she had managed to book an appointment with a specialist renowned for treating stubborn pharyngitis, promising to pick up my medication tomorrow. She said the place was quite far and asked if I had time to drive her there. I hesitated for a moment. Laura's son Leo injured his leg while playing in the snow, and with the heavy snowfall disrupting traffic these past few days, I've been giving her and her boy rides to and from school. "If you're busy, forget about it. I'll just take a taxi," Chloe said nonchalantly. I nodded in agreement. "All right, I have an important meeting tomorrow and won't be free all day." The next day, I picked up Laura and Leo, and she mentioned wanting to stop by a private clinic for physiotherapy. Snow began falling thick and fast again. When I drove to the private clinic, I was surprised to see a long line stretching outside the small bungalow. After parking the car and preparing to get out, I spotted Chloe at the end of the line at a glance. She was bundled up tightly, hunching her neck and blowing on her hands for warmth. A thin layer of snow covered her head and shoulders. She must have been standing in the snow for quite some time. Laura was taken aback and murmured, "What's she doing here?" I furrowed my brows and glanced behind us. The alley was too narrow to turn around quickly. Don't get out yet, I said after a moment's thought. Opening and closing doors will make noise. She'd easily spot my car. Let's wait till she goes inside. Laura bit her lip without a word. After a while, she spoke softly. I'm just bringing my son for a doctor's visit. Why does it feel like we're sneaking around? I remained silent, sitting in the well-heated car, quietly watching Chloe shivering incessantly in the cold wind. She had always been someone who feared the cold. Right now, her turn was likely still 40 minutes away. Half an hour later, Laura could no longer contain herself and spoke up. If we wait any longer, we'll miss our appointment. With that, she suddenly opened the car door and got out, holding Leo in her arms. Bang! The sound of the door closing echoed. Chloe instinctively turned her head to look in this direction. Her gaze first fell on Laura, then gradually shifted to the car. A trace of confusion flashed across her flushed, freezing red face. The next second, it was just her and me, staring silently at each other through the windshield. 6 As Chloe stepped out of the line and walked toward me, dozens of thoughts flashed through my mind in an instant. Chloe, what are you doing here? I got out of the car, feigning surprise. Seeing it was really me, she froze momentarily, her dark almond-shaped eyes widening slowly. Jason, what are you doing here? Then she turned toward Laura, and this is. Laura's expression was indifferent, holding eye contact for 2 seconds before revealing a barely perceptible hint of mockery. And who might you be? Chloe's brow furrowed slightly. Seeing this, I hurriedly explained. Let me introduce you. This is my wife, Chloe. This is Ms. Scott, a business partner from my company. She brought her child to see the doctor for a leg issue today, so I offered to give them a ride. Chloe, what a coincidence. I had no idea the place you mentioned yesterday was here too. Laura gave a light laugh. So you're Mr. Miller's wife. My apologies, I couldn't find a ride in the heavy snow, so I asked Mr. Miller for a small favor. Please don't misunderstand. Chloe tilted her head at me. Didn't you say you'd be busy all day today? I smiled and said, today's meeting was cancelled unexpectedly. Miss Scott is a single mom with a child, and I thought I should help where I can. Chloe pressed her lips together without speaking. Though my heart tightened slightly, she had always been easy to soothe, so I wasn't particularly flustered. At that moment, I gazed down at her. Perhaps from standing in the snow too long, her long eyelashes were dusted with white frost, giving me the fleeting urge to brush it away. I should go in now, Mr. Miller. I'll leave my bag in your car. Sorry to trouble you to wait a bit longer, Laura said with a smile. I quickly replied politely, no problem at all. Since I drove you here, I'll naturally take you back the same way. Might as well see things through to the end. Laura gave a faint smile, her gaze brushing past Chloe as she prepared to walk inside. Chloe suddenly spoke up. Miss Scott, I think you'd better take your bag with you. Laura froze for a moment before turning to look at me. I frowned slightly and said, Chloe, she's just putting her bag down. It's fine. Besides, you're still in line anyway, we'll have to wait either way. Chloe said nothing, stepping past me to open the car door and slide into the driver's seat. Confused, I asked, what are you doing? Her tone remained calm. It's too cold, I suddenly don't feel like waiting in line anymore. Since you came with her, it wouldn't be right for you to leave early. I'll just drive home first. I suppressed my voice. How are we supposed to get back if you take the car? She smiled. If I can hail a cab, presumably you can too. With that, she shoved the bag from the passenger seat into my hands. Starting the engine, she drove off without another word. The car left 2 tracks in the snow. I froze momentarily. Mom, I want to go inside. It's so cold here. Leo complained loudly. Laura looked disheveled, her hair dancing wildly in the wind, appearing rather pathetic. I've never been insulted like this by anyone before, she murmured under her breath. I felt irritated. I told you not to get out of the car, but you insisted. She suddenly glared at me and said angrily, is it wrong that I just want to get my child treated? At least in her eyes, I'm your business partner, right? Is this how she treats people? Does she look down on me? Or is it you she's disrespecting? I fell silent. Indeed, what if Laura really was a company client? Chloe's behavior was indeed somewhat excessive. The heavy snow that day didn't stop until evening. After the medical appointment, Laura and I waited over an hour before we could hail a taxi. When I returned home half-soaked, Chloe was curled up on the couch watching a drama. Without saying a word, I went straight into the bathroom with a dark expression. After showering and washing my hair, I came out to find her leisurely eating noodles. Unable to hold back any longer, I growled, since when did you become so rude? Chloe looked up. What? Seeing her utterly unbothered expression, a fire surged from the depths of my heart. I raised my voice and demanded, what do you mean by taking the car away? Do you know we had to wait almost 2 hours for a taxi later? Why are you so selfish? Are you cold? She asked. Of course I'm cold. It's -10 degrees today. Yeah, I was that cold too. Suddenly I realized something. Chloe was angry. Actually, most of the time I can't tell whether she's really angry or not, because her tone was always even and soft. Combined with her naturally smiling lips, it seemed she carried a perpetual smile. So much so that I always had this illusion as if she could never get angry. Even anger seemed feigned, like coquetry. Suddenly feeling guilty. This guilt threw me into utter panic, and I instinctively blurted out, "Chloe, surely you're not suspecting me of something." She looked at me for 2 seconds. To be honest, not really. I immediately felt justified, my indignation growing stronger. Then what was that about today? I told you Ms. Scott is my business partner, she just needed a favor with driving. But you took the car. You've made me look like a joke. She pondered for a moment, her expression calm. But I don't think it's acceptable for a single mother to call a married man for help during regular working hours, especially when it's not an emergency. That scene today made me uncomfortable. In that moment, I just wanted to respect my own feelings and not do nothing, only to end up tormenting myself. I stared at her, momentarily at a loss for words. She tilted her head slightly and handed me a pair of chopsticks with a bowl. "Want some noodles?" The next day, Chloe acted as if nothing had happened. I felt somewhat pathetic, yet also relieved. She wasn't the type to hold grudges. It was over for her once it was over. But what I didn't expect was that, for Laura, it wasn't over at all. That night, just after dinner, it was my turn to wash the dishes in the kitchen. The doorbell rang, and Chloe went to answer it. When I finished washing up and came out of the kitchen, I was surprised to see Laura sitting on the sofa. Chloe was pouring tea for her. After a brief moment of panic, I quickly composed myself and put on a puzzled expression. "Ms. Scott, how did you get into my home?" Laura smiled and pointed to several boxes on the coffee table. "Mr. Miller, thank you for your strong support of my work. I brought some local specialties from my hometown to personally express my gratitude." A sinking feeling came over me, and I was about to stop her from continuing. Chloe finished pouring the tea and looked up at me. "Ms. Scott just told me she's thanking you, her high school classmate, for supporting her with a major insurance policy." My heart tightened. After that incident last time, Laura caught a cold from walking in the snow for 2 days. With a pale face, she said to me in a stubborn yet aggrieved tone, "Jason, you know perfectly well I don't want your money, nor do I want to break up your family. But your wife's actions made me feel personally insulted, especially in front of her own child." At the time, the company was planning to purchase supplemental commercial insurance for employees. To placate her, I handed this account over to her. Now, under Chloe's gaze, I nodded calmly. "That matter? Not worth mentioning. I didn't really contribute much, just standard business collaboration." "You're being too polite, Ms. Scott." Chloe lowered her eyes and said nothing. Laura sat for a brief moment before rising to take her leave. I politely escorted her to the door. At the threshold, she whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "Your wife's water tastes awful. I still prefer yours." I said loudly, "Ms. Scott, take care." After closing the door, I let out a quiet sigh. At least no unnecessary trouble had come of it. Yet, secretly, I felt a thrill, as if breaking free from the mundane routine of ordinary life, producing an unusual adrenaline rush. I thought to myself, next time I visit Laura, I must give her a proper punishment. Lost in thought, I sat down on the sofa when suddenly I heard Chloe asking from across the room, "Why wasn't I told?" I froze for a moment before realizing she was questioning me about the insurance matter. This is the partner selected by several deputy directors of the company based on the product content. Besides, aren't you in the bank insurance department? Do you also handle this kind of group insurance business? My tone was somewhat harsh. Logically speaking, this is an internal matter of my company, and she had no right to question it. Chloe wasn't affected by my attitude and spoke in her usual calm tone. "As your wife working in the insurance industry, even if your company has alternative channels, it's only reasonable you should have informed me about this matter. Yet you never consulted me about it from start to finish." I suddenly felt a surge of irritation. "Chloe, I've noticed how you've become like this lately. Always nitpicking over every little thing. Do I really have to report my company matters to you?" Chloe fell silent, biting her lower lip as she stared at me, a flicker of light flashing in her eyes. My heart felt as if it had been pricked by something, sourness swelling with sorrow. Nothing else mattered more than her sadness in this moment. "The company doesn't have one, and neither does Laura." I was just about to lower my head to apologize when I heard her say, "In every aspect, the insurance products from my bank are more suitable for your company's specific situation than those from the insurance company she works for. You value your career, and I value mine. This is from a professional perspective, yet you've labeled it as meddling in your company affairs. I won't accept that. Lately, it's not me who's been acting unusual, it's you. You're always agitated, losing your temper, yet you turn around and accuse me of nitpicking. That's the behavior of someone defensive and flustered. And that Ms. Scott, I know perfectly well she came here to provoke. So Jason, what exactly did you do?" she finished slowly, looking up, those dark eyes fixed on me. Suddenly I couldn't bring myself to look away. On the 9th, I stormed out of the house after losing my temper. I couldn't stay there any longer, because I realized Chloe's seemingly calm responses could be unexpectedly overwhelming at times. I said coldly to her, "If something as trivial as Ms. Scott's matter could cause discord between us, then it shows our relationship wasn't strong to begin with. I have to go to Miami headquarters next week for the year-end review. I'll leave a few days early, this will give us some space to cool off. I hope you'll have changed by the time I return. As I wheeled my luggage out the door, I secretly hoped she would act like she always had before. One moment pretending to be angry, the next moment grinning and sidling up to me, cooing in that sweet, pleading tone, "Alright, Jason, I promise I won't do it again." But she didn't. She sat quietly on the sofa, her head slightly lowered. Not a word, which made me feel as if she too thought a temporary separation might be a good option. I flew to Miami with Laura, that was what I'd promised her. To live like a real married couple in a place where no one knew us. Overjoyed and moved, she left Leo at Grandma's house and began whispering hubby to me the moment we boarded the plane. I called her wifey in return. On the hotel bed, I punished her for daring to go to my house without permission. With reddened eyes, she complained, "I'm just jealous, I just want to compete with her." Clearly, I could have that kind of life too. I sighed. Laura had endured a tough life these years, and I could somewhat understand the feelings in her heart. So I took her to see the best views in Miami, treated her to the most romantic meals, and bought her all sorts of expensive gifts. Throughout this process, I deliberately avoided thinking about Chloe. We'd already come this far. Even if I cut ties now, it wouldn't change what had already happened. At least I was better than someone like Chris. I merely indulged some of my desires without choosing to abandon my family. A man, especially a reasonably successful one, occasionally breaking free from the shackles of conventional morality is not such an unforgivable crime. Throughout history and across cultures, countless heroes have been the same. There's always a phase in life when one acts recklessly. What's more important is that I harbor an unspoken confidence within me. To take a step back, even if I were to lay everything bare before Chloe, she might collapse, she might suffer, but later, she wouldn't leave me. What I tried so hard to do was to avoid the process of her breakdown and suffering. On the third day in Miami, Chloe suddenly sent me a photo. It was a black lace bra. Below it, a line of text. "Found under the bed. Not mine. Whose is it?" For a moment, my hands and feet turned ice cold. In pursuit of excitement, Laura and I had met clandestinely at home several times. I asked Laura immediately. It wasn't until I saw the shock in her eyes that I realized my voice had sharpened into something unrecognizable. "It looks like mine. I don't know why it's in your house." I closed my eyes, feeling as if I were abruptly plummeting into weightlessness. But I knew I absolutely couldn't admit to this. Admitting it would mean the fault was mine. Confession would leave me forever mired in moral quicksand. I deliberately waited a long time before replying with a single sentence. "Chloe, is this the trick you've been plotting all these days? False accusations? I'm truly disappointed in you." In the following days, with debriefings and year-end meetings keeping me busy, I never initiated contact with Chloe again. I've thought it through thoroughly. If she's muddled, she might not truly recall whether there was ever such a piece of underwear. If she's clever, then it's even simpler. She ought to drop the matter right here. This is a game between her and me. Whether our future life remains peaceful or descends into quarrels depends entirely on the stance I take at this very moment. Sure enough, Chloe didn't press me further about the matter. It appears she made a wise choice. As the regional director's representative, I stood confidently on the executive reporting podium. Such is career, such is life. Before leaving Miami, I asked Laura to leave a day later, sent Chloe a message with my flight arrival time. She should have come to pick me up. At the airport, not seeing Chloe immediately soured my mood. When I returned home by taxi and still couldn't find her, I barely contained my erupting fury. For a moment, I even thought that Chloe's narrow cognition and rigid mindset might not suit my future path. But after all, we had loved each other for years. I took out my phone and called her. Her phone was turned off. Remembering something, I went into the bedroom to check. All her clothes, jewelry, and personal belongings were still there. So she isn't walking out. She's probably still playing hard to get, waiting for me to apologize. Seeing the photo of her beaming smile on the nightstand, I suddenly realized I actually miss her a little. These days in Miami, being glued to Laura all day long has, in some way, made me feel less happy than before. There were even moments when, naked and utterly at ease, she would stroll around the room, leaving me momentarily bewildered, wondering who she was and why she was in my room. I suppose men are always changing their minds, so I ordered another bouquet of flowers as compensation for the lingerie incident. Chloe fell for it. When I called her again, she picked up. I spoke calmly. "Let's go home. We need to talk this through." She answered me, "I'll be home in half an hour." Chloe arrived at the same time as the flowers. To my surprise, she was pushing a suitcase, but soon I figured it out, probably just trying to put on the act of running away from home. I handed her the flowers and spoke sincerely. "Chloe, don't be angry anymore. I've thought about the insurance matter, and you're right, I didn't consider your feelings. I sincerely apologize." This time, I received high praise at the group headquarters. "Let me ask the people there and see if I can recommend similar opportunities at other branches for you." But I blinked and teased, "No more of those sneaky tricks, like like scaring me with random lingerie photos. She didn't take the flowers but merely said calmly, "No need." I chuckled in disbelief. "What do you mean no need?" She gave me a glance. "No need means I've already handled it." Through Miami headquarters insurance department, I proposed a comprehensive group insurance cooperation project for all employees to your corporate headquarters. These past few days in Miami, I've been coordinating this matter. What? Haven't you received the group insurance procurement notice from your headquarters yet? I froze, hardly believing my ears. What did you say? You've also been in Miami these past few days? She lowered her head and pulled out a document from her suitcase. Here, take a look at this. If everything's fine, sign it. I numbly took it and suddenly froze rigid. The cover bore bold characters, divorce agreement. My mind went blank for a moment, and the words burst out. What do you mean by this? Chloe, how could you threaten me with divorce over such a trivial matter? Chloe looked up at me and sighed softly. Jason, I've come to accept that people's hearts can change in an instant, but I still hope we can at least be honest with each other when we part ways. I flung the divorce agreement onto the floor, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. So for you, divorce is just something you can casually mention? What do you take these years of our relationship for? I was truly furious, even feeling somewhat wronged by her lack of understanding. I had worked tirelessly, sparing no effort, striving to maintain a family that would make her happy. Yet she insisted on ruthlessly tearing it apart. The room fell abruptly silent. She suddenly bent down, drew out a rose, and twirled it gently in her hand. Jason, did you and Laura enjoy Miami these past few days? 11. That sudden sense of weightlessness instantly flooded over me again. It felt like a wad of cotton was stuck in my throat, rendering me speechless. I could only stare at her wide-eyed. She brought the flowers to her nose, sniffed them softly, and sighed in a low voice. The flower fades in less than 100 days, and human fortune is just as fleeting. The old saying is never wrong. Jason, since things have come to this, can we skip the meaningless steps of arguing and fighting, and just solve the problem, okay? Suppressing my emotions for a long moment, I forced out a muffled sentence. Is it possible you've misunderstood something? She shook her head helplessly and turned her phone screen towards me. Laura added me on Instagram. These past few days, every single detail of your time in Miami, where you went, what you ate, what you did, what you bought, she's documented it all in photos. I'm panicked, utterly panicked. I never imagined I'd feel this flustered when the moment actually came. So much so that my hands trembled when I reached for my phone. As I swiped through photo after photo, I calmed down a little and looked up at her. Are you being too paranoid? None of these so-called photos you mentioned show me. All they prove is that Laura went to Miami at the same time, but weren't you in Miami too? What does that even prove? This hardly counts as solid evidence. Chloe suddenly let out a pfft laugh, not the exaggerated kind you see in TV dramas. She genuinely laughed. She chuckled for a long while on her own. Jason, are you mistaken? What's all this talk about solid evidence? Isn't it enough that I believe? I stared at her blankly, my mouth opening and closing soundlessly as words failed me. She said with a laugh, and then there's that piece of lingerie. Did you really think I wouldn't understand what was going on? Or were you convinced I wouldn't dare to pursue the truth? I was just disgusted and didn't want such a revolting matter to interfere with my work. Jason, you really make me sick now. My body involuntarily shuddered. Chloe was someone who tolerated almost anything and rarely used such subjective language to judge a person. But now she says I'm disgusting. After getting with Laura, I definitely imagined this scenario before. Yet in the scenes I'd envisioned, Chloe was supposed to be devastated, weeping uncontrollably, even pleading with me. And I, though at fault, should still have held the upper hand in this relationship. So why has the script flipped now? Jason, you know me, when I decide to do something, I prefer quick and decisive action at any cost. You've got 3 days to consider the settlement terms. Oh, remember our wedding vows? We swore that whoever cheated would leave with nothing. Since I've already determined you're at fault, I'm taking 90% of the assets in the agreement and leaving you 10%. Pretty generous, don't you think? Of course, if you're unwilling to accept this, you could always take it to court. But then I'd have no choice but to release the security footage originally meant to monitor Buddy. I haven't reviewed what's on it myself, but you probably have some idea? Her tone remained steady and gentle throughout, as if discussing some trivial everyday matter. Suddenly, I felt afraid of hearing more from her lips than I could bear. After standing frozen for a moment, I bolted through the door. I went to Chris's place. He was quarreling with his lover, using vicious words and displaying a fiercely cruel expression. It was hard for me to imagine how affectionate they had appeared when he first introduced her to me. I wandered aimlessly on the street for a while before Laura called me, her tone stern. What's going on? Why did your company's HR say the group insurance application was rejected by the parent company? Didn't you assure me everything was foolproof once the process started? At that moment, I couldn't stop myself from cursing loudly in the street. Who the fuck are you to ask me? If it weren't for you provoking Chloe over and over, showing up at her place and posting on Instagram, would things have turned out like this? You fucking idiot. Can't accomplish shit and only ruin everything. Chris was right about you. You really think you're some pure goddess? I must have been fucking blind and out of my mind. I vented all the pent-up resentment that had been building up inside me, and made up my mind to split with Laura for good. I thought such a proud person would be furious and break up without hesitation. Who would have guessed she changed her flight for the next day and flew back that very night? Her eyes were red and swollen when she found me. She'd clearly been crying. Jason, I know something must have happened. Otherwise, you wouldn't have treated me like that. Tell me, and let's solve it together, okay? With nowhere else to go, I followed her back to her rented apartment. After all, it was me who'd been paying her later rent, including the complete replacement of all appliances and furniture. I went there with a clear conscience. After learning what had happened, Laura lowered her head in thought for a moment before concluding. She played you, she's pulling a tactical retreat. I stared at her blankly. Her tone was firm. Women understand women. I know her game. With your current financial situation, why on earth would she initiate a divorce? Jason, she's retreating to advance, and you panicked. I froze. She was right. My annual salary was nearly $500,000. Considerate in nature, handsome in appearance, and boundless in prospects. Any rational thinking person wouldn't insist on a divorce based on such unsubstantiated evidence. From a woman's perspective, why do you think she's doing this? Laura smirked disdainfully. Isn't it obvious? With your flourishing career, the gap between you two will only widen. She feels insecure, worried, and is using this chance to emotionally and morally suppress you, trying to gain the upper hand in your marriage. As if clutching at a lifeline, I eagerly asked her, what should I do then? Just go ahead with the paperwork. When she sees how resolute you are, she'll back down. There's a cooling off period anyway. If you change your mind afterward, you can just withdraw the application. That night Laura tried to initiate intimacy, but I turned her down. For some reason, I'd suddenly lost all interest. None whatsoever. Instead, I began missing Chloe terribly. Missing those evenings curled up on the sofa watching TV together. Missing our conversations while cooking side by side in the kitchen. I miss how she would smile at me while talking, all those ordinary moments. 13. Chloe and I went to the city hall to file for divorce. On that snowy day, she wore a thick scarf that covered half her face, leaving only her dark, sparkling eyes visible. I maintained a stern expression the entire time, though countless times I wanted to embrace her, even impulsively considered pleading for her forgiveness. But I held back. Laura was right, this was a game of strategy. I had originally thought the same way. It was just that Chloe's sudden divorce caught me off guard, throwing me into disarray. After all, this was only the first registration during the waiting period. It couldn't decide anything. Enduring temporarily now was for the sake of future happiness. Just as expected, headquarters sent out the notice. All branches that have not yet signed group insurance policies are required to temporarily suspend operations and hand over the procurement process to headquarters for unified management. I was genuinely surprised. I never expected Chloe to actually pull this off in just a few short days. She had never shown much ambition in her career before, rarely even mentioning the details of her work. From what I recalled, she was just selling insurance through bank channels, nothing particularly challenging about her job. But looking back now, she had no background or connections, yet succeeded in staying within the banking system among all the candidates. That itself proves her capability. She rarely talked about work, which precisely shows she kept work issues well under control. She never quarreled with anyone, indicating she handled interpersonal relationships with exceptional ease. I used to think she was simply an optimist, happy because she desired nothing. Truly capable people aren't those who handle thorny problems, but those who nip issues in the bud before they even take shape. This only strengthened my belief that she was retreating to advance. I waited anxiously for her call, fluctuating between agitation and composure. Laura joked she might resort to typical feminine tactics like claiming she's ill, pregnant, or drunk. Just you wait. Sure enough, on the 9th day of our cooling off period, Chloe called to say she was pregnant. They'd been married for 4 years. The first 2 years they used contraception for career reasons, and the subsequent 2 years they didn't actively try to conceive either. The doctor said both were physically healthy, and if they weren't in a particular hurry, they could just let nature take its course for now. After all this time without conceiving, how did it suddenly happen this very month? On the phone, she said, whatever the case, I felt you should know. I let out a long sigh from deep within, my tone icy cold. Since we're divorced, then let's just get rid of it, she said after a brief silence on the phone. So you think that way too? That's good. My mood suddenly improved considerably. I even personally cooked for Laura and Leo. During this period, I was temporarily staying at Laura's rented apartment, but we lived in separate rooms, like ordinary roommates. After returning from Miami, I never had any physical relationship with her again. She initiated it a few times, but I had zero interest. Whenever I recalled those afternoons when I used to sneak over during work hours to have affairs with her, I couldn't even understand my past self. Laura's goddess halo had completely faded in my eyes. When Leo opened the door leading a strange man inside, Laura was serving rice while I placed the beef stew that had simmered for hours on the table. I exchanged glances with the man, barely having time to ask. He gnashed his teeth and roared, "You're the bastard who slept with my wife," before swinging his fist and launching a furious barrage of punches at my face. Amid Laura's screams, I felt blood slowly obscuring my vision, while an excruciating pain surged through my lower body. I passed out. When I came to, I was already lying in a hospital bed. Chris was smoking beside me. Seeing me wake up, his expression became complicated as he told me some things. That fight caused by Laura's husband back then started because she got into an argument with someone during a meal. She insisted on getting a divorce and moving away, wanting to completely cut ties with her past. After his release from prison, her husband had been searching for Laura and their child who were avoiding him. Eventually, he tracked down their address and learned from others about my cohabitation with her. In a fit of rage, he harmed me. The current situation is that her husband, with nothing left to lose, is shouting threats, saying he doesn't care if I report him and have him arrested again. He accuses me, a married man, of infidelity and vows to cause scenes at my workplace and in my hometown. Finally, Chris looked at me with pity. The doctor said both your testicles are ruptured. You'll likely lose fertility. I drifted through a daze in the hospital for a week. Then I returned home to find Chloe. I knelt before her, confessing and repenting with every single word deliberately uttered. Finally, in tears, I said, "Chloe, I never once thought about divorcing you, not even when I lost myself with Laura for a moment, never. You're family to me. I promise to be good to you for a lifetime, and I swear that's truly what I believed." I was momentarily blinded by desire and made the mistake all men tend to make, but in truth, I started regretting it in Miami, I really did. I've thought it over countless times, and there's no other way out. At this point, we have to go through with the divorce first. That man is insane, he really would come to my company and make a scene. You know I work in women's products. If it gets confirmed that I was still married, well, my career would be ruined. Chloe, I swear this is just a fake divorce. I love you, and you're the only one I want to spend my life with. Maybe you find these words disgusting to hear right now, but I mean them from the bottom of my heart. To make it up to you, I'm willing to give you all the 200,000 plus I've saved as my private stash. And once this is over, I promise we'll immediately remarry. Chloe had been sitting on the sofa listening with a blank expression, but at this point she suddenly interrupted me, her face showing disbelief. "Jason, did you really believe all this time that our divorce was fake?" She sighed to herself for a while, then shook her head with a bitter laugh. "Jason, I solemnly tell you, every word I've said since I asked for a divorce has been true." I stared blankly. "But you loved me so much. How could you suddenly?" She looked down at me with pity. "Because back then, you were a qualified husband in my eyes. I choose to live joyfully, so I fully immerse myself in every stage of life. I loved the version of myself who loved you, so I gave you the deep love of a wife. But all of that was built upon my willingness. You cheated. I'm no longer willing, so I took that love back. It's that simple. As for why you find it sudden and refuse to believe, that's your problem. For me, it's simply about facing reality without worrying about the future, living in the present without clinging to the past. That's all there is to it." I wandered aimlessly down the street, suddenly feeling how utterly meaningless everything was. Work felt meaningless. Laura felt meaningless. Even getting beaten up felt meaningless. People came and went on the road, making everything feel even more pointless. In my days, I faintly recalled having gone through similarly dark days before, back when everything in life had seemed meaningless, which was precisely why I'd started doing charity work. That was how I'd eventually met Chloe. And then, without even realizing it, I came under her influence and began to change, gradually becoming brighter, more confident, and spirited. Now, at a certain moment in fate, I was struck back to my original form. 15. With Chloe's cooperation, Laura's ex-husband took advantage of the group leader's inspection to deliberately cause trouble, and I presented my divorce certificate. At least it proved there was no serious moral wrongdoing. But after all, it still had some impact, and I was demoted to department manager. I actually accepted this outcome faster than I had anticipated. Most of the time, I carried on talking and handling work outside as usual, appearing as if nothing had changed. But back in my temporary apartment, I would lie motionless on my bed aside from basic necessities like eating and using the bathroom, from evening until the next morning. I couldn't even muster the energy to sue Laura's ex-husband. Laura called me once. "Everything is fate. Nothing can be. I hung up before she finished speaking. Every day, I shuttle between my company and home, like a soulless robot. The only thing that keeps me going is the thought that after the hurt this matter caused Chloe fades, I'll pursue her again. I mustn't be too incompetent back then, so I'll attend the shifts I need to attend. Illnesses must be treated. The new director is Ethan Shao, the young financial vice president from the group headquarters. I often overhear my female colleagues secretly discussing him. Director Ethan is so handsome and tall, just like a male lead in a drama series. I don't even dare to look him in the eye. He graduated from an Ivy League school and has never been in a relationship. What kind of person would someone this outstanding like anyway? He's already the vice president of the group, so why did he come to a subsidiary company just to be a director? Isn't that a demotion? I heard he requested it himself, so mysterious. I wasn't the slightest bit interested in any of that. When I had free time, I obsessively refreshed Chloe's social media. She truly meant what she said about not dwelling on the past. She didn't even remember to block me. Or perhaps, she simply didn't care. This also allowed me a glimpse into her life. She had cut her hair, Buddy learned new tricks, the flowers on the balcony had been changed again. Until one day, as I wandered aimlessly down the street, I suddenly saw a sight I could hardly believe. Ethan and Chloe were walking side by side. The handsome man and beautiful woman drew admiring glances from passers-by. Ethan lowered his head and whispered something to Chloe. She laughed. Ethan also curled his lips into a smile, tilting his head as he looked at her laughing. Without a second thought, I charged over, my voice distorted and muffled as I sharply demanded, "How are you together? How could you possibly be together?" Chloe looked at me in astonishment. I knew I was being rude, appearing like a complete madwoman, but I couldn't care less. I was desperate to know the nature of their relationship. Ethan wrapped an arm around Chloe's shoulders, shielding her behind him, then looked down at me and spoke calmly. "Manager Miller, I have you to thank for meeting Chloe. If it weren't for your branch's application for employee group insurance that required Chloe's participation as the bank representative, we never would have crossed paths." My voice came out hoarse. "So you two were already..." Chloe frowned. "Jason, what exactly are you implying?" "Actually, I was..." Ethan suddenly turned to look at her, his eyes sparkling. "Later, I accidentally saw your divorce papers, and that's when I got the idea to transfer here." "Chloe," Ethan suddenly grew earnest, a hint of nervousness showing on his face. "Could I have a chance to pursue you?" "No," I shouted hoarsely. At the same time, Chloe pressed her lips together and smiled faintly. "Of course," I said with despair written across my face on the noisy street. No one noticed. Extra, 3 months later, I resigned and returned to my hometown in the South. I couldn't accept Ethan's blatant pursuit of Chloe. They seemed to be cut from the same cloth, not overly concerned with others' opinions, more focused on their own feelings in the moment. But I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't bear the way people looked at me, whether intentionally or not, nor could I stand any glimpses, gossip, or hints of Ethan and Chloe being together. I found an ordinary sales job with very low pay, and my parents started arranging blind dates for me. Each time, I would tell the women that I'd been beaten by my ex-wife's new husband for cheating, resulting in ruptured testicles and a very low probability of having children. They all looked at me like I was some kind of monster. Over time, no one tried to set me up anymore. I think it's fine. Later, I heard news about Laura in a high school classmates group chat. Her ex-husband claimed loudly that his imprisonment for fighting for her had ruined his future, and he harassed her daily. One day, while he was fast asleep, she stabbed him in the stomach with a knife. He didn't die but was left half paralyzed. Laura was imprisoned and sentenced to 5 years. Listening to all this, I felt they were so distant from my life. It felt like people and events from a past life. A year later, Chris's ex-wife called to tell me Chris had died. He got cancer, his mistress ran off, then he came crawling back to me. He offered me all his assets in exchange for taking care of him until death. Naturally, I agreed. Who says no to money? How laughable. Back then he fought me tooth and nail for every penny in court, and now he's begging me to take it all. I remained silent for a long while. Just as she was about to hang up, she suddenly remembered something else to say. "I ran into Chloe last week. She came in for a checkup with a big belly, and her husband treated her so well, he was nervous the whole time as if she were some fragile porcelain, making the young nurses green with envy. Speaking of which, Chloe's quite fortunate. Back when she had that abortion, the doctor said her constitution was special and the chances of having a child later were very slim. But she gritted her teeth and went through with it anyway." My hands began to tremble, my teeth chattering. What did you say? When did she have an abortion?" A surprised voice came through the phone. "It was when you two got divorced." "You didn't know?" I could no longer handle any work. I'd suddenly start shaking uncontrollably at random moments. After scaring a few clients, the company eventually let me go. I shut myself in my room all day, not speaking to anyone. My parents sighed constantly. Feeling ashamed, I ate very little each day and grew increasingly thinner. At some point, the children in town began shouting whenever they saw me, "The stick is coming! The stick is coming!" I often dream of that snowy night long ago. Heavy snow fell as I first tasted forbidden fruit, returning home with trembling fear, only to find Chloe bundled up in thick layers waiting for me downstairs. Percent. When she saw me, she trotted over with a beaming smile and said, "Jason Miller, if you don't come back soon, you'll only find yourself with an ice sculpture for a wife." This small southern town was damp, sticky, and perpetually swept by subtropical winds. In all the years that followed, I never again experienced another snowy night like that one. There never was another like him, the end.